story that I want to share with you right now is a story about water and about fish, which is a very, very important thing to the Haudenosaunee. Each Haudenosaunee village, like Ganondagan, which was a town of about 5,000 people when it was built about 350 years ago, each town or village was built near a river or a stream so that there was a fresh water source. But also in most of the streams and rivers, there are lots and lots of fish, and fish was a vital food source for the Haudenosaunee. When we think about a lot of Native American people and the way that they got their food, we often think about hunting, but hunting was a way to get a little amount of food. The way that people got most of their food was by farming, and the Haudenosaunee women were tremendous farmers. They grew corn, beans, and squash, what we often call the Three Sisters, and they could grow millions of bushels of corn, just like they did here at Ganondagan. But another primary food source was the fish and the things that came out of the water. That there are all kinds of good plants and animals to eat along the water's edge or inside the water itself. So the fish are very, very important to the Haudenosaunee. This story is about the leader of the fish, the chief of the fish, and how he finds a bride. Well, this story happened a long, long time ago, back when the Great Turtle Island was brand new. And Great Turtle Island is what the Haudenosaunee call this place that we live on. Most people call it Earth, or North America. We call it the Great Turtle Island. Back when the Great Turtle Island was new, the Creator was still fashioning all the things that we have here on the Turtle Island that sustain us. And one time, he reached his hand down and he scooped through the earth between some tall mountains, and then he filled that area that he had scooped out with some water. He filled that ravine with that fresh water. The snow melted from the mountains and ran down into this beautiful river. And then he filled it with lots and lots of different type of fish. But one fish that he made was bigger than all the others. And he made this fish the chief of all the fishes. He gave him special powers to look over the lakes and rivers that were around there, and to make sure that all the other fish knew their instructions. This fish had so many powers that he could change himself into a man and walk upon the land as he went from one stream or river to another. But because this fish had these special powers and so many important responsibilities, he was very lonely. He had no other fish to share his life with. And so he sang to himself each night a love song, wishing that he had a mate, but no other fish were the same size as him. One day he was in this stream, and as he was singing his powerful song, he happened to look up at the bank of that river, and there he saw a beautiful, beautiful Seneca woman. But the Seneca woman was crying. Oh, she was so sad. She had come to the riverbank to cry these sad tears because her father was forcing her to marry an old man. The man was a chief inside the village, but he was old and very mean to her, and she did not want to get married to him. But her father wanted them to be wed because the man had a lot of authority and power inside this village. Oh, the young woman, she came and she cried and cried and cried next to that stream every night. And the chief of the fish each night would poke his head out of the water and he would stare at the beautiful woman, and his heart just went out to her. Each day he fell more and more in love with her. One night when she was crying next to the stream, he lifted up his voice and he started to sing that beautiful song, that love song that he would sing each night, looking for a mate. When the woman heard the song, oh, it touched her heart very deeply. She looked all around through the forest, thinking that there was some young man that had come to steal her heart away. no one around. Next night she came back and she heard that song again. And over, night after night after night, she heard this beautiful love song. She fell more and more in love with whoever was singing that wonderful song. Well, one night she came and she heard that love song and she replied, "Come out, I must see you. I have fallen in love with you and I want to be your wife." The chief of the fish was very worried, but he parted the waters right in front of her, and he came up out of the water in the shape of a very handsome man. His beautiful regalia was covered with silver brooches that kind of overlapped each other. And he said to the young woman how much he loved her and how beautiful she was. He asked her to come away with him and to be his wife. But before the woman could say yes, she suddenly heard someone coming down the path. It was her father, and he was very angry. He was yelling for her to return to the village and that it was time for her to wed the old chief. When the woman looked back to say yes to the fish king, he was gone. He had heard the voice of the father, and he had dove back into the water and resumed his normal shape. Oh, the woman was very sad, and she told her father that she would return to the village very soon after she collected water for the evening meal. She dipped her skins into the water and filled them, and she started to walk along the path going back towards her own village. But as she was going, she suddenly saw a fish. It looked like a large bass laying in the middle of the path. But attached to the bass, there were beautiful silver brooches, all in a line along the fish. Well, she thought these were the most beautiful things that she had ever seen. So she picked them up and she attached them to her own deerskin dress. She took the fish back to her village and roasted it up for the evening meal. But when her father came and saw her wearing the beautiful silver, and he saw the fish being roasted, "Oh, Shah!" he said, "Who has come and tried to win your heart? Who has given you these gifts? You need to marry the old man and cast these aside." He grabbed the brooches and ripped them off of her beautiful dress. And he threw the fish down into the hot coals so that no one could eat it. Oh, the girl was very sad because she wanted to keep those beautiful brooches. And she dug the fish out of the fire so that she could have something for an evening meal. That night, inside the longhouse, everyone laid down to go to sleep. But the girl was overcome with a terrible, terrible thirst, one that she had never felt before. She went to her own water skins and drank them down, but her thirst continued on. She went out to the nearby spring and got water, but again, she could not slack that thirst. She was driven down to the stream where she had been before, and she put her face into that water and drank up as much water as she could. When the thirst had finally slacked a little bit, she listened and heard the beautiful love song once again. She knew that that handsome man was around, and she called out to him. The waters again parted, but now the chief of the fish came up in his normal shape, and his body was covered with beautiful silver scales that looked like those silver brooches. He said to her, "That fish that you found, that was a gift from me, and those brooches, they were my offering for our wedding. I still want you to be my wife, but you must come away with me and live in the water." Oh, the girl, she was unsure if she should take the shape of the fish. But then she heard her father again, streaming through the woods, yelling out to her, calling her to come back and marry the old man. So she dove into the water and she embraced the chief of the fish. He took some of those silver brooches and placed them on her body. She suddenly turned into a fish, the same as him, and they dove down into the water and went to his lodge. There they were married. Still, on the shore of the river, they could hear the father yelling and yelling, and the girl had to go back and tell him what had happened. The two of them came up to the surface of the water, and she called out, "Father, because you were forcing me to marry that old man, I have run away, and now I am the bride of the chief of all the fishes. But never can I return to land, and I will live in the water forever." The chief of the fish and his new bride dove down into the water and returned to their lodge, where they lived very happily. And to this day, when Haudenosaunee see a very large or unusual fish, they say, "That must be a child of the chief of the fish and his beautiful bride." And especially if we see any with very silver scales, we know it is a child of the chief of the fish. Daneho. That story is done.